I was a maintenance officer, and Al, he wasn't there too long before he began spending time in my office reading technical publications on lubrication, synthetic oil.
And he said, all the jets in the world use this oil. And I remember him saying that. He said, well, wouldn't it be good in cars?
I think what got Al interested in synthetic lubricants is the knowledge that jet airplane he was flying was surviving and able to survive because synthetic lubricants were used in that engine to cool it and lubricate it. He understood and knew that a normal mineral oil would not survive that environment. So I think what he did is said, hey, the environment in this jet engine is very, very severe, but then again, the environment within the gasoline engine is not a whole lot less severe. I think there's advantages for synthetic lubricants to be used in the automobile engine.
Seeds of ambition sown years earlier, glimpsed in a young boy's contemplation of cars crossing a bridge, in the goal printed in a high school yearbook, and in lessons absorbed from an enterprising businesswoman, were about to bear fruit. After years of witnessing firsthand the advantages of synthetic lubricants in jet engines, Al Amatuzio's mind had fixed on a new goal. Why not in cars?
And that's when he got the whole idea to go into business with synthetic oil. It was an AMSOIL company. And you know, at the time, people were poo-pooing it.
When he first came out with the synthetic oil, they said, Al, I think he's been on altitude too long without oxygen.
There was an officer down in St. Paul that I knew quite well, who was an insurance man, who called Ammo's oil moose milk. And he says, Ammo's gonna go broke, monkey with his moose milk.
In fact, Al's idea was based on established science. His concept was the application of a highly developed technology to a need as old as the internal combustion engine itself.
People use lubricants in their automobiles to protect their engine from wear and to provide slipperiness, if you will, so the engine can turn freely and maximize fuel economy, so on and so forth.
What you do is under dynamic loads, you build a thin film. It's a barrier. It's a barrier film, and as long as those metal surfaces are not rubbing against each other, you don't wear.
But a film of conventional petroleum motor oil, also known as mineral oil because the base fluid is refined from crude oil, is doomed to fail as the random molecules interact and break down. In contrast, the base fluid of a synthetic lubricant is engineered in a laboratory to have strong, uniform molecules.
And that is the simple concept of synthetics. The base fluids have much stronger films than a petroleum.
In addition, the chemical potpourri in mineral oil includes waxes that cause the oil to thicken at low temperatures, even into a solid. Again, synthetic oils are chemically uniform.
The advantages that the products have is they have extremely good fluidity at low temperatures. And that's something that a normal mineral oil just cannot achieve even with the heavy use of chemicals. So low temperature fluidity is the major advantage. High temperature thermal stability is the other advantage.
When you can put together a fluid that is very stable, right, especially at high temperatures, it has the opportunity to last longer. You don't need the same intensive use of antioxidants. The acid number doesn't rise as rapidly, and you don't break down, you don't get the tars, sludge, and varnish. Therefore, it lasts longer.
A synthetic motor oil would offer consumers a quantum leap in quality and performance. Benefits would include reduced friction and wear, particularly at extreme temperatures, and cost savings through longer engine life, better fuel economy, and fewer oil changes, a capability Al called extended drain interval. However, formidable obstacles remained, including how to formulate a synthetic oil for automobile engines and how to market it. By this time, Al was ready for a new challenge.
He had established himself very well in the military, and he wanted to move on. There was something else calling him.
And he began doing experiments with cold testing in the freezers. He started studying chemistry books and learning about additives, and started formulating products and experimenting on them with some of the people that were in his flying group.
And he says, geez, will you put this oil in your car? I said, oh, God. You know, I thought, my first brand new car, do I really want to put this oil in there? And he said, I said, oh, well, you know, I'll try. And I said, what the heck? He's my squadron commander. What could I say? You know. So I put it in my 1966 Ford station wagon. And geez, you know, I'd run it and everything is fine. And he'd call me up. He says, get that crap out of there. I got some new stuff.
By 1970, Al had formulated an oil and formed a company. He tried a series of names before finally settling on AMSOIL. Al was still flying, but nearly every other moment was consumed with getting his new product off the ground.
When he first started actually making oil, he warehoused it in his garage, and he worked out of his basement. He had a little office in his basement. And his cars were parked out on the street. He used his garage for oil.
He would write his own literature, he would write his own bottles, he would do all of his own artwork and design. He was selling oil out of his trunk.
Well, I think we were partially bankrupt at one time. He just put everything we had into the company and had gone his limit on borrowing. I mean, a lot of people didn't believe in what he was doing. A lot of people refused to borrow him money. And, you know, he was almost living out of his station wagon, selling oil out of the back of the car, trying to make ends meet. That was a tough time.
He struggled.
He struggled.
Al was struggling. He was trying to sell his oil in the conventional manner, but the problem is that it cost 10 times more than the oil that was available at the time, the mineral oil. And you couldn't put it on a shelf because nobody would buy it.
He was being resisted by everybody and everything. The auto industry didn't recognize, nobody recognized synthetic oils. The auto industry certainly didn't. They didn't recognize extended drain intervals.
The major oil companies, that's the last thing that they wanted, was a competitor with synthetic oil.
Trying to compete against the major oil companies, that can become a disaster.
It had to be scary because he committed himself to that, and he wasn't in Houston, and he wasn't in any of the so-called oil areas. He was in Duluth, Superior. I mean, I didn't really know where Duluth was until the first time I flew in here.
As the stresses and pressures mounted, fate dealt Al a cruel and unforeseen blow.
In the middle of all of this, Al got very, very ill. I don't know that most people would know that, but he was very ill. He had something that could have killed him.
And he called his brother Don, who was a doctor in Minneapolis, and told him his symptoms. And his brother told him, will you come down and see me so I can do tests on you? Al went down there and he tested him, and it was a thyroid condition.
And maybe there were 8 or 10 of us that were aware of these diseases of the thyroid gland in the Twin City area. And I was just fortunate enough to be exposed to it and make that diagnosis.
Don took him through the process of healing again, and he's never had it since. But if it hadn't have been for his brother, he would have died. No one else knew what it was. So that was one of those small miracles, I believe.
With AMSOIL proving to be such a hard road, this health scare might have been the final straw, especially for someone with such an enviable career to fall back on. But Al never moved his foot from the pedal. The illness was just another bump in the pavement, and he was determined to find out where this road would take him.
It was Al's optimism in the whole situation that was so important. And really, that is a trait of Al that has been critical to his success.
It's a drive from within. There's no other way to explain it. He had a vision, He knew that this product was going to be successful. He had to market it. He had to develop it from scratch. He had to fight all the odds, all the people who said that it wouldn't work.
He was really struggling, but every time you talked to him, he had a success story with his oil. He never complained. He never, you know, it was always positive, always upbeat, always, you know. He really believed in that stuff, and he down deep, he knew it was going to fly. He just had to figure out a way of making it fly.
Al was a pilot, not a businessman, had no formal business training whatsoever. He has a head full of common sense, and so he ran his business with common sense back then, just as he does today.
Al's common sense told him that he needed to prove his oil in the toughest arena he could find. Al enlisted old friend Felix Tomlinson, now living in Southern California, the hotbed of racing development, to help promote his oil. Tomlinson got a sample into the hands of legendary race car builder Dan Gurney and ace mechanic John Miller.
They took a Yamaha motorcycle out one weekend and put it in the motorcycle, and John had one and Dan had the other, and he said Gurney says, "You can't believe it." He says, "I just run away from him. It made all the difference in the world." So they said we stopped, and I changed oil, and we drained both of them, and I put Johnny's oil in my rig and put AMSOIL in John's rig, and took off, and John went by me like I was standing still. He says, "I gotta try this stuff in the car."
The lead driver for Gurney's team was racing legend Bobby Unser. For over a decade, Unser had dominated the grueling annual road race up Colorado's Pikes Peak. But Unser was having problems with the gears in his Pikes Peak car. The rear end kept failing after just a single day. In desperation, he contacted Al and begged him for some AMSOIL.
So he mailed me some, put it on an airplane. In those days it was an easy thing to do. And I put it in, and lo and behold, my rear end, to show you the difference, would not only last one day, it would last through all the practice session, which was 3 days, qualifying day, which you run further, and race day, and be good for next year. Now, that's the biggest gain I've ever made on a lubricant in my life.
In California, Tomlinson continued working the racing circuit, where Al's new promotional materials were giving AMSOIL's credibility another shot in the arm.
I was just thrilled when we finally got a great advertising program and a nice label, and this was the first of the AMSOIL labels. Here is some of the first literature. We had some real legitimacy and some nice product presentation. This was a driver that we sponsored and had the AMSOIL stickers. And here I am handing him the check in my polyester leisure suit.
Without a doubt, the biggest prize in racing was the Indianapolis 500. And Bobby Unser was one of Indy's shining stars. By now, Unser was a strong believer in Al's product and a close friend, but the big oil companies had a lock on his sponsorship. That didn't keep Unser from doing what was needed to win.
So I'd carry the oil in, and I'd just set it in the garage along on the floor so everybody would see it. If it'd be a 5-gallon can, it'd be a 5-gallon can. If it'd be in quarts, it'd be in quarts. It'd all say Valvoline on it, or whoever was doing it in those days. And inside would be AMSOIL.